Several years ago, not actually many years ago, the Tourism Board recognized the value of the Coosa River as an asset for us in the community, and actually for quite a number of miles around, all the way to Anniston, Cherokee County. The Coosa River is our lifeblood. It gives us water, gives us life. It's a very valuable asset for tourism, for fishing, recreational, people that live here. And the value of that is now apparently estimable. I would say it's unestimable, but there is a value to that water, and we need to know that. As most of you know, Alabama has a place at the table in the water wars issue, with Georgia removing water from various rivers that feed the Coosa. Florida has issues, but Florida does not have a water plan. Alabama does not have, did I say Florida? I meant Alabama. Alabama does not have a water plan. They are working on one. Everyone that has water in their rivers that they use to live and grow, they're going to need to know at one point in time the value of that water, because there are people upstream from us that are taking water, and they have been. Our flows are much lower than they used to be. This is going to continue as Atlanta grows, and we're going to have a plan to make do with the water we have and to protect the water we have. One of the things we wanted to do was find out how valuable this water is to us, so that we have information when we need it, to present it to lawmakers, to present it to educators, to present it to the people that are making these decisions, that this is what it means to our community. We partnered with the Neely Henry Lake Association to commission a study from Jacksonville State University to look at all the value of the water, the industry, the tourism, the recreational aspects, the governments, the people that live here, recreate and play and live on the water. It's valuable information, and today we're going to find out a little bit about that, and we're going to introduce a couple people, and then Dr. Boozer will come up and do his presentation of the report. We have a presentation to give you to take with you. We'll also have this on video, and we'll also have the PowerPoint presentation. Let me introduce right now Jennifer Green. She's the project chairman, project head from Jacksonville State University. She can introduce the other folks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like you said, my name is Jennifer Green. I'm the director for the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Jacksonville State University. This project has definitely been a labor of love, as you said. In trying to put a value to a lake, a body of water, is very interesting and very detailed. And so as we've been collecting data for from 9 to 12 months, and the success of a project like this, economic analysis is not an exact science. So when you see numbers, those are the quantifiable numbers that we could come up with based on identifiable and reliable data. But there is no way to count every single person, survey every single person, go door to door, all of that. So we relied upon a lot of government data. We did some surveys, a resident survey, a lot of business data, and Jeff can talk. Jeff Huey here is our research analyst with our office, and then Dr. Boozer, he will get up to discuss more in depth after me, but there was a lot of data that went into this report, and all of that data is available in the back of the report and all of the appendices. So you will see what all of this is based on. It's not just fluffy numbers. But we are very excited about the results of this study and welcome any questions discussion. So at this time, I will introduce Dr. Ben Boozer. He's an associate professor of finance, but he is an integral part of our team at the JSU Center for Economic Development.
Thank you, Jennifer. Glad to be here today. It's a little higher. As Jennifer said, my name's Ben Boozer. I'm with the JSU School of Business. I teach finance, but it's a great opportunity, I think, to do these projects and see what all is going on in the area in which we live and work. And as we were doing this project, I think we really could see how important this facility is to this part of Alabama, and how I'm hoping that this presentation and this report will allow you to tell the story and allow others to see it and how important it is, and lawmakers to see that. So I think we put together a very good report for you, and I hope it will be beneficial. Now, the objective of what we're doing is to measure the economic impact and the economic effect in Etowah County and the surrounding counties of the Neely Henry Lake and the Coosa River. And so when we're doing this, as Jennifer said, some of it's based on estimation. We have some hard data, but it's based on estimation as well. So we're looking at that, and it's not an exact number. And we're going to give you a number, and that number we feel like is very accurate. But is it exact? I don't know. It's close. Okay? So we're doing this, and this is for fiscal year 2017. Now, the total economic activity attributable to Etowah County is almost $500 million, $523.7 million. Or excuse me, it's over $500 million. I'm sorry. It's over $500 million. So that's significant, when we think about the economic activity. Now, we're going to look at the different aspects of how we derive that number and what this means to us. But this is the number that we're using, and the number that we're reporting is the economic activity attributable to Etowah County. Now, when we say economic activity and economic impact and economic contribution, and you'll also see the term economic benefit, these things mean that the words are used interchangeably. And we've tried to present you a definition of what each of these terms mean. And I think this will be important to us as we look at this. Economic activity, looking at the dollars spent within a region that are attributable to a given industry, event, or a policy. And when we talk about the economic activity analysis, we're looking at those numbers. But we're also bringing in the types of impact, okay? Now, when we talk about impact, we're looking at the net new contribution. This is new economic activity. So when we mention, you'll see the term economic activity used in this report and in other reports, but we want to, and you can, when you say impact, this is new numbers. This is new numbers coming out there. And we're going to look at what that means in terms of this study. So we have these different terms: economic activity analysis, economic contribution, and that's the gross change. But then economic impact are the new numbers, okay? Now, the study area of this analysis, we have the city of Gadsden, city of Etowah, city of Glencoe, city of Hokes Bluff, city of Rainbow City, and city of Southside. Now, we did a regional part where we reached out into the areas of Calhoun County and St. Clair County that were contiguous to that river region and to the lake area there. Okay, but you'll notice the vast capacity of this affects Etowah County. All right, now when we look at each, we did two different parts. We did how the economic effects of the river region and the lake on Etowah County, and then as well as on the entire region. And again, looking at the Etowah County, it's $523 million. And then you'll notice in the river region there, the region analysis area, it's $570.6 million. So you can see Etowah County is where most of the activity is occurring, But there's also, within the other two counties, those areas that touch the river area there, the river region. Now, if you can see this is where we really broke down the economic activity into various areas. So, and I named these economic variables, okay? And if you'll notice, we looked at these economic variables, and then we looked at how the effect was on Etowah County and then on the region analysis area. And this is how we came up with these two total numbers that we reported. So these total numbers are the summation of each one of these, the values found on each one of these economic variables. So we had the fiscal base case impact, we had lakefront property value, tournaments and championship, daily use, FERC daily use visitor data, residents' contribution, recreational household spending, boat sales, employment by sector, Goodyear payroll, gas and water works payroll, dam operations, and steam plant operations. Now I just want to touch a little bit on each one of these and more or less explain what they mean. When we look at this fiscal base case impact, this is the fiscal type policy effects that are occurring through taxes, through how this affects the area. Okay, so this is economic activities providing the taxation and other fiscal base case it provides. So you'll notice here that we had $40 million for the Etowah MSA and then 41 for the when we looked at the entire region. Now, lakefront property values. This is something, again, that I think we did a very good job in identifying those particular areas. Jeff pulled a lot of data, and he looked at what the county, the GIS, what they had provided in terms of the assessed value. And so what this is saying is that this lakefront property has an increased value because of where it is, because of the lake region, okay? So that's an effect right there. Now, the tournaments and championships, we're going to look at this a little bit more in a minute. But notice that we had an effect there of $10 million, and in both cases for the actual Etowah County as well as for the region analysis area. And now think about that. These are people that are on the lake, and this is an economic impact, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. But these are people that are there at the lake, that are spending money, that are coming to this area, just because of that. This is the new money, okay? Now, the FERCA, Federal Electric Regulatory Committee, daily use visitor data, and what that's showing there, this represents the people that are just coming to the site daily, okay? And so as we have people coming there, this again represents new money. This is an economic impact. So people are coming and visiting. They see the beauty of it, they see the value of it. They want to be there, and this is an example of impact. Now, the residents' contribution. Okay, again, these are things where the residents are involved. The residents are, by living here, by spending money here. There's a contribution. And this is an economic effect that we have that, from that activity that's going on with the residents. Recreational household spending. Now, this is money that households spend on these items. There's several databases to find this information, and we look and see, well, okay, what do individuals, per household, what do they spend on recreational items, right? And again, by living in this area and by being at this, near this region, then they're going to spend money, to participate in activities at the region. Boat sales, another area where we look at the boat sales and say, well, this is a part of an economic activity that is attributable, to the river. It's attributable to the lake because it's a direct. When you look at a boat sale and say, well, okay, where are they going to use those boats? Well, they'll use it there at the river, at the lake. Employment by sector. Notice that this is a huge amount, but think about all the different businesses that relate to the lake. I mean, these are things, and we have a list in the full report if you'd like to look at that. For the sake of time, we didn't put it in the presentation. But all the businesses that are involved in activities surrounding the lake. these are things such as hotels and eateries and retail type stores and, on and on and on. Just think of those numbers. And again, you have a full list in your report. But so that's a big area there. It's employment by sector. These are people that are working in these jobs, and these are people that, are spending money. And this is activity that's going on, okay?
Dr. Coosa, I wanted to ask you that. So you're calling this a Neely Henry Lake study, and then there's the Coosa River. So at what point are we just calling this study that name, but it includes all
river-
these counties and the river
The
study?
river, right, the
The
river,
impact of the river.
the river area there. Now Jeff may
Sure.
could
So
tell us.
so that's where I was wondering. So this is not just the lake.
Right, it's not just the lake. I may have to ask Jeff how far up we went, how far around the lake, the river area went, but it didn't include, we had to find a stopping point somewhere. So it's showing, we didn't want to just say that the lake itself was the only impact, because I think that wouldn't be complete. So we went in the river area there some. Jeff, did you have
Yeah,
anything?
what we did and what we discussed with Hugh and back and forth with you guys when we met with the association back, and I believe it was November, when it says Etowah County, Gadsden, MSA, we stopped with that. That's the full county. So that's what that number entails. And then when you see the region analysis, that also includes the zip codes that are just associated with Neely Henry, that just touch the lake and the Coosa River. So that's what we're talking about there. And you pretty much, we did not go up to Weiss. We didn't
Sure.
include any of that. We didn't include any of the, what's the,
So was it dam to dam?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's.
it wasn't dam to dam. We didn't go all the way up to Weiss Lake. We had to cut off at the county line. We had to stop it right there.
But it's pretty
The
darn
focus was on
close.
Etowah County. But we felt that we had to include parts of St. Clair and Calhoun because Neely Henry Lake touches the dam right there.
So basically then from Neely Henry Dam to the county line
Yes.
and
then-
what touches on that area?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So it's the study of the water bodies and ways of within the Etowah County area.
Yes,
Thank you.
correct.
What county is the Neely Henry Dam actually located?
It's actually located in Calhoun County. Parts of well,
St.
it
Clair to Calhoun.
depends. Some of the land's in Calhoun, some of it's in St. Clair, but the actual dam is in St. Clair.
The other side of it is at St. Clair.
Yeah.
That's what.
There's the line that cuts.
Is that the dam operations separate from the last line?
Yes.
13 million?
Right.
And this question arose because of what you mentioned, hotels, and I know hotels are in Etowah County on the river, correct? Is
Right,
there- There's
right.
nothing else other than that.
Right, and those, yes, and when we think about all the types of employment that are affected, most will be Etowah, yes. And so, and you'll notice, in which we did that, I think that data were only available for the Gadsden MSA, so that's what how we reported that. Okay, any other?
Shane had the observation that if the dam is not in Etowah County, would its operations then not be associated with it? I mean, it touches the lake, it's on the lake, but if it's not.
Well, what we did is we had to use a calculation because part of that Alabama Power money does go to Etowah County, and it goes to St. Clair County, and it goes to Calhoun County. So we had to use a conservative effort to see kind of how much of that money that they allocate to those counties would actually go to Etowah. So we had to use a conservative effort. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So
We were
that's
not
what.
able to.
So the operations were higher, you didn't use all of it, you just used.
Right, but we consulted with Alabama Power, and they felt comfortable with that number and the calculation that we used to come up with that. So that's what we felt comfortable with.
Yeah, we made sure we got there okay.
Okay. All right, so the next, we look at Goodyear payroll. Again, these are some economic effects. The people working at Goodyear and the location of Goodyear. in this area, as well as the Gas and Water Works payroll. And we reported these. You'll notice that they were reported for the Etowah County and the region analysis area, based upon the MSA is how we really looked at each of these based upon that MSA. Of course, the dam operations and steam plant operations, you'll see the significant economic activity attributable to both of those. Now, again, each of these last four, or last five really, is equal, or we're showing it for the Etowah gas and MSA. So you'll see that these numbers are the same. Now, we have the formulas and how the calculations were made for the dam operations as well as the steam plant. That's in your, in your full presentation, and so, or in your report. So, feel free to look at that. But again, that's with consultation. Jeff worked on that, with Alabama Power, and on how those numbers were derived. Now, again, and you'll see that this all sums into this total economic activity for Etowah as well as for the region. Okay. Now, we talked about the tournaments. In this part, we're going to get into a little more detail on the actual economic impact. Remember, we looked at those terms earlier, and we said that when we're looking at economic activity and economic impact, those numbers are used loosely. You can look at many studies, and you'll see the numbers used loosely, and sometimes there's overlap. But what we're doing here with this is we're going to look at the economic impact, this new money, okay, the new money. And you'll notice in 2017, there were 90 local tournaments and 52 regional tournaments, and a total of 8,490 anglers participating. Okay, so think about that for a minute. And again, when we're looking at this activity and how this can be used in telling the story on the number of tournaments here and the number of anglers. Now, that's good, but again, this could be a good promotional tool, I think, for having even more. And notice that this economic activity, okay, of the total economic impact of the new economic activity that was brought in is 10.4 million. So, as we look at the people and what that means is, and we're going to go through the model in just a minute on what economic impact, how that's derived. But what that means is these are people coming to the area. This is new money coming to the area where they're spending money, they're staying in hotels, they're buying gasoline, they're whatever, they're buying food, they're buying different things, buying retail things associated with, with being here. And, so this is impact, economic impact that's attributable to those tournaments.
Dr. Boozer, let me interject for just a moment on the tournaments.
Yeah.
So these numbers are Coosa landing. We don't have accurate data from other ramps because they're not fully manned, they're not manned. So, but we know Rainbow City, for example, has high numbers of tournaments, but they're much lower numbers of boats. We don't have a way of tracking them. Canoe Creek now is open in St. Clair County. They're starting to attract new tournaments down that end of the lake. When we say local, that's what we mean, sort of like our Sunday morning and our Tuesday, Wednesday tournaments, where the people are not driving from very far. They may be coming from Calhoun or Cherokee. They may come from Rome, but we don't have a way of tracking those as well. We know they took place because they're on the logbook at Coosa Landing, but we're not assuming them as doing much local new money impact because they live here essentially. The regional tournaments, however, that's the important number because those are the tournaments that are bringing boats in from significant distances, where they're having to spend nights and where they're having to purchase gas and things in our county to get back to where they're going. So that's now that 8490, that's the total of all the anglers. But the big majority of that would be the regional, because they're the bigger tournaments. They're the ones that have 100 plus boats, 2 people per boat, that type of thing. So I think that's very accurate. When we surveyed various tournaments like the Alabama Bass Trail Championship, Coosa River Team Trail. We survey those and we see economic impact from one tournament of $225,000 to $350,000. It really relates well to, you can see that these numbers are big. And we don't want to skew it by putting those local anglers in there. but we do need to know they are existing, they are taking part.
It's a good point with the regional. You have people, these are people with money too, that come into an area and they, and there's spending money, they tend to spend more, their consumption propensity. And so, that's an important thing to consider when you're attracting, the outside money, this new money, is that a lot of these people, have more money to spend, higher per capita income.
Dr. Boozer, if you could hold it there too. So we talked about them staying. May I ask you what are the other situations that impact that? Because may I give you my calculation at around 84, 90, say around max 5 days. You're talking around, say, 3.5 million. So I was wondering where this rest of the 5.5 million came. What's this? Would it be because you've talked to restaurants? It'd be nice because I'll tell you why. This is probably one of the best examples we now have. We've often talked about the impact of tourism on this area, but we've never had a value.
Well,
And to justify tourism of what we have done since this new board came on board, one of the biggest things we've introduced to Etowah County is the use of the river. So it might be a good thing, Hugh, to get that value so we know who all is impacted. I don't want to go out from here thinking that's all hotels, because it's not.
Oh, no.
And I want to make it very clear to people that this is not only hotels. This is way more than hotels.
And we will go into that. The 10 million is derived from not just the direct effect spending,
Sure.
but also the indirect and the induced,
Absolutely.
which affects, a multitude of different industries within
Yes.
the economy.
Yes, and gasoline is one of them.
Right.
And it's seeming like gross revenue.
I mean,
That would
it
include
affects your
lodging staff.
doctor's offices, your real estate.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everything.
Right, that's a good question, because we're gonna, in just a second, we're gonna look at the entire model, the economic impact model, and how, how that spending goes into it, and how there's a multiplier effect. And I think that's gonna be important to us here. But as we look at this, and we see this, again, you'll see some overlap and some things where we've mentioned, spending money, going to hotels and things like that, because there's going to be people going to hotels anyway. But what we're trying to show here with this is how it's attributable, new money attributable to, to the lake and to the lake area. Okay, so 10.4 million from these tournaments. All right, now, according to Alabama Power's Federal Electric Regulatory Commission daily use visitor data in 2017, the economic impact generated by the daily use visitors is approximately 1.6 million. Now, that's for Etowah County. Now, notice that this represents 269 persons with a daily use of 269 persons and a weekly use of 1,885 persons. So what we're saying with this, and again, this is another component of economic impact. And what we're saying with this is these are people that are there, that are visiting. A daily use of 269 persons each day, okay, and a weekly use of almost 2,000. And so, as we look at this, again, they're going there because new contribution. They're going there because of the lake, because of the river region, okay. And so this is an area denoted here as economic impact.
And Dr. Boozer, the FERC number is, I would bet on any given day there's way more than 269 people on that lake doing something.
Right.
Between April and October.
Right, I agree.
So it's a very conservative number because they have a limited ability to check those numbers.
Right, just like we mentioned, it's estimates, and that's unfortunate with these type studies that we don't. It's really impossible to have hard data. We do, we can generate and pull data from these reliable sources, but I agree that this at any particular time, there's a lot of things that affect this too from year to year. Weather and a lot of economy, the national economy. So a lot of things can affect this. But yes, this is the number reported, that we utilize based on FERC data of daily use, at $1.6 million impact.
Yeah, it was the only quantifiable data we had, which is why we listed in the report some limitations of the study, which make this a conservative number because we can only analyze what we can prove. And so, just keep that in mind.
Okay, now, this term M-Plan, this is some software that we use. We've been using it for several years. It's used very widely in economic impact analysis and regional economic activity, measuring economic activity. It's very accurate. It's very well received and accepted in the industry. And what we're doing with this is we're looking at this database that it has, and of course we have some input numbers that we'll input, and it goes over 528 different industries. So this software, this statistical package, replaces a lot of the old ways. In some of the studies that you look back, they may not have this type of detail. They may just apply a standard multiplier, for example. And we're going to talk about multiplier analysis in a minute. And so sometimes if you look at an older study, be careful to look and see, well, what type of methodology was used. And so with M-Plan, it's very accurate because they look at it. It has built into it different spending and consumption propensities. How much somebody's willing to or typically spends within a certain area. And it's not just a one area. They look at different areas, different parts of the country. When I say different areas, I'm talking about different industries and different parts of the country. So it's very precise. So I wanted to mention that, in that I feel like this gives our report a strong foundation. Now, it's really what we're doing here with this on this input-output analysis. We're putting in this input, and it's using these multipliers, and it's taking that information, and it's producing an output. And we're going to look at some of the different effects, and we're going to look at what multiplier analysis means. But this is important to us to understand on how, as you have spending, it doesn't just stop there. In other words, it's not where you go out and you spend money and then it just stops there, because it rolls through the economy, and we see that. So the new spending that we're doing, that we're attributing, to the lake and to the river region, we need to think about how that flows through the economy, and we're going to look at that. A lot of interdependencies between economic sectors and institutions. And of course, we really can't, there's economic shocks and different things that go on, through the economy. And as we look at this, we see that how this particular model, so there's some of the things at the macroeconomic level, of course, that may happen, and it may not be captured yet, for example, by the data. But I feel like that this report and using the M-Plan has made this report very strong. All right, now through this input-output model, now what we want to do is we want to look at three types of effects: direct, indirect, and induced. Now these direct effects, this is something from when you see the initial amount, when you see something being built, or somebody coming, like the tournaments, or the daily use visitors. That's a direct effect. We see that direct effect. But this is something here, these indirect and induced effects, that we really need to consider on how this works. Again, the money, the dollar spent doesn't stop there. It flows through, and that's what's so important about economic impact analysis. Through these indirect effects, you have, as that money is spent initially directly, then it generates economic activity. Well, how is that served? Okay? So if somebody, if you come to the area there, and you go to a tournament, or you're on the river, how is it served? Well, if they're eating somewhere, then you're going to have food brought in from there, right? You're going to have hire workers to prepare the food. You'll have to, commerce will take place in terms of providing supplies. Or if you go and buy a boat, well, you have workers, you have commerce that takes place. So these are part of the indirect effects. All right, so we have the direct effects where you have that initial amount, and then you have indirect effects that essentially I like to think of it as serving that initial amount. Okay, it's economic activity, and this case would be purchases and different things that go on that are serving that direct spending. Now this part here sometimes is overlooked, the induced effects, and what this is talking about is household income. You know, so you have people spending money or, you know, which encourages other commerce to take place. Well, as other commerce takes place, then what happens? Well, some people are earning money, right? They're working and earning money. So this is an increase in household income. And if you look back at different studies in economics, you'll see where people in general, you know, they have a certain propensity to spend. So if they have more money, they're going to spend more. You know, if they have more money in their pocket, they're going to spend more. And that's what happens here. So all of this starts from this direct effect that encourages indirect effects in serving that direct effect. And as those indirect effects occur, as both of them occur, you have induced effects with higher household income and wages, and that of course is spent. Okay, so that goes through, and that's the total value of the regional economic linkages. So as we look at these, again, we should you know, identify that it's not just one time. You know, it's not just going out and spending, but it's going through. It's a ripple effect. Okay, and this is from the M-Plan methodology that we use, and this is a reflection of the economic activity, the new activity. Excuse me, the economic impact, which is a new activity.
Dr. Boozer, can you talk a second about the induced effect and the indirect effects, what that number, is it a higher multiplier than one?
It's a higher multiplier, but we don't really.
Several times.
Yeah, and we really can't say what it is, and let me explain why. Some of the older studies you look at, they'll assign like a 2 or a 3 or something to it. That's a very, very general number. You may have something where the multiplier, some industries where it may only be 1, you know, 1 to 1. You may have some it may be more than that. What M-Plan does is, again, they look at each one of these areas, the interdependencies among these areas. And they even, you know, they don't really report a multiplier, and they'll tell us, we've discussed that with them, they'll tell us, you know, that there's, you really don't have a single multiplier to report. So what this does, though, is this looks at those interdependencies. So, you know, it'd be more than 1, yes, because that's why, you know, it's producing greater effects. As you spend money on something through the direct, then additional money or additional resources are going to have to be contributed, and then in contributing those resources, there's certain spending that goes on, and so when certain spending goes on, then of course there's different, you know, taxes, and there's other things that occur, you know, as well as goods and services bought and sold. So yes, to answer your question though, that's a good question, that we really don't have a, and you'll notice there's not a multiplier number reported, because there's multiple multipliers, you know, based upon these different interdependencies and these linkages.
So it's not 13 then?
And let me just
Page
add,
number.
Yeah, that's the page number. Yeah, I'm sorry.
let me just add, it is an urban myth that the dollar turns over 7 times in the economy. That would mean you would have a multiplier of 7, which is ungodly. So when people talk about that, just keep in mind, I mean, this is very, very, very precise, and it's very precise to the geography, the dollar year that it's happening, the industry it's happening with, the interrelation between the industries. So, I mean, this is about as accurate as you can possibly.
And that's where the precision that you don't have when a blanket multiplier is applied, because that blanket multiplier may give you a somewhat accurate number. A lot of times it's going to be too high, but it can be a somewhat accurate number. But this gives you that precision, and that's where I think that the M-Plan model is usually much more accepted, you know, as an accurate or more accurate methodology than some of the older models. Yes, 13 is a page number. Thank you. Okay. Now, this goes over a few things that I've just mentioned about the direct effects, the initial effect of the result of money spent to pay for salary, supplies, raw materials, operating expenses, and other capital. And again, this is, you know, we're applying these to the tournaments and the daily use. The indirect effects, and these again, this is the business-to-business transaction, the things that go on because of that direct effect. And then, of course, the induced effects, and that's just higher levels of household earnings, wages, salaries. And this is money that as people earn more money, they're going to, they're going to spend more of it, their consumption propensity. And so as they spend more of it, that flows through the economy. Now, you might say, well, how does that work? Well, it all goes back to that initial amount. See, again, we're looking back, we're pointing that induced and indirect, or pointing back to the direct. And so this takes place, and this is why this is this component of economic impact. You have to look at each of these three effects.
Dr. Coosa, just a second. Hugh, do we not have a number that tourism gives us that's the revenue, that's an exact dollar amount per household in Etowah County?
Yes.
And what was the last year at the time we got that? Was it in 17? And that was 328?
398.
So it went up from 328 to 390. So we have a number, and I'm not sure how it's derived, but it has gone through my years from somewhere in the region of 170 something all the way to 390 per household in Etowah County that so-called what we call tourism or travel has made here. Now, how is that derived and how that effect may be something you could use, I don't know.
So the way they do that is
Yeah.
State Department of Tourism does that. They get it from Auburn University. They take
So they-
the total expenditures in Etowah County that
Yeah.
are through tourism related. You take the number of households in Etowah County and divide that number, and that comes up with the additional amount of money that tourism, the tax revenue from tourism spending in the county. There's a number that is. And that's determined by people that spend, the taxes created by the spending of tourism items, hotels, food, percentages of food, retail sales, divided by the number of households, tells you the amount of money that you saved in taxes that you would have had to pay to keep the same level of services if you didn't have tourism and you didn't have visitors to your county. And that number was 398, I believe, in 2017.
And that's a huge number.
And it's
for-
increased from 120 to 150 something. So it's just doubled in the last 9 years.
Yeah, that's a different measurement.
Mhm.
I mean, when we're talking about economic activity, and, I mean, that is an important number. How would you say it relates to?
Well, how it relates to this is just, you have to think about this as additional earnings that people, as more workers are hired, there's more people out there working. As more activity goes on, as if you have a higher demand, then you may have to pay workers more. And so when you think of induced, if you're just looking at induced, that's that higher household income and wages that went on. But when you go back to indirect, this is additional, additional activity that went on. And I think what you're saying, was this just tax information, or was this?
Yeah, in Etowah County, yeah.
Okay.
So it's the taxes that are created by a purchase that is tourism related.
Right.
Those, when you add all those taxes up from the various things, that they create a certain amount of money, that if you didn't have those tax collections, we would have to pay out of our own pockets a certain amount of money to teach the same level of services.
So we basically, $398,
Per house.
we saved
You
as
saved
a
the taxes.
resident.
Yes.
of
Someone would have to
everything.
raise your
Yeah.
taxes by that much for you to
Yeah.
live on your street
Yeah.
Right.
with your property tax and pay your sales tax and such.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this one? Okay. These are the acknowledgements of this first part here. I want to really thank everybody that provided for this study. I think it's been very interesting. I always enjoy looking at things in the area and how beneficial it can be to the area. I feel like that this will be something that you can use, and it will be helpful to you in looking at the economic activity associated with the lake and the river region. And so, and again, I want to thank everyone for allowing us to do it. And any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr.
If you look back to the page in your handout, page 8, it talks about the total economic activity. And we really did things that were focused on the river. So it's really, that's why we highlighted tournaments. We didn't go up to Nakalula Falls and take surveys of people at the world's longest yard sale, because they're not really being affected by the river. Okay, so when you're thinking about this, that number you see, $10 million, that's just the river fishing. So still think about all the other economic activity through tourism that's going on at the falls or at other locations. So there's a whole nother factor that, because this is not just a tourism study, so that's why this is not a tourism report. This is a economic activity report that is created by the river. So if you were to look at just the total tourism number, maybe that's something we do in the next 30 years, just tourism, it would be a much higher number. And also, you want to think about the fact that just take out all of the employment numbers, those big numbers, and look at some of the others, the residential contributors, the recreational household spending, the tournaments and championships. Those numbers are money that's being created in Etowah County through tourism, and people using the lake. So those, you can say, well, it's a big number, but that's because there's a lot of payroll in there. Well, that's true. I mean, but that is activity that's created by the lake, so that's why it's in here. So don't just say that. We don't want to just say this is a tourism-related report. It's an economic-related report for the county. And you each have the PowerPoint presentation, and then you have the actual full report. So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to, sometime just give us a ring. We'll try and answer them for you. Thank you all.